This presentation is about the adolescent learner and what we know about them so that we can best meet their needs. You will need to watch this presentation, take some notes if you feel like that will help you, and then complete the quiz after you've watched both this about the adolescent learner and the other presentation about content reading. So the adolescent learner, as we know, these teenage years and preteen years are a huge time of transitions. The adolescents take on many different identities. They are an athlete, they are a best friend, they're a son or a daughter, a babysitter, employee, gamer, and their mind is not always on school. As well as that, technology has added to that transition time with a flood of information from all different places, flooding them at all times. So we need to keep that in mind, that their mind is not always directly on the teaching that you're doing. What adolescents need is they need classrooms that are like communities. And these classrooms should include teachers that demonstrate compassion and kindness. And the community aspect is where it should be a social environment, where there is more talk. We seem to forget about having students turn and talk with one another when they're in the middle and high school levels. In the elementary, there's lots of turning and talking, partner, pair, share, things of that nature. Once we get to the upper levels, sometimes we forget that, yes, they are more independent, but they still need time to share their thinking with one another and collaborate. And that cooperative learning is going to nurture that adolescent motivation and engagement. Middle and high school readers struggles beyond the literal comprehension. Middle school and high school students can read, but many times they're missing that support to become that strategic reader, that reading with purpose. Those who know how to use the strategies are going to use it, but those who don't know are going to need support in those areas. And that is going beyond the literal comprehension. The middle school and high school struggling reader needs help with inferring, drawing conclusions, critiquing the text and what the author has to say. They sometimes miss having that inner conversation with the author, that in the head conversation where they're wondering and questioning what's going on with what they're reading. And in middle school and high school, the students are moving from narrative text, so they're not so much the story types that they're used to reading in elementary. Now they're reading more complex material that is task or test specific. And those demands have changed with challenging genres and a variety of different kinds of text that they're encountering. What we need to remember about the adolescent learner is appearances can be deceiving. Many adolescents appear skillful with the mechanics of reading. They know how to decode. They can read fluently. But like I mentioned before, they aren't strategic readers. They aren't strategic where they're interpreting meaning. They're just basically going through the motions of reading. So we need to make sure that we're supporting them in being strategic readers. Lots of times at middle school and the high school level, there is no free reading time. You don't have that DEAR time or that SSR time where it's just drop everything and read and just sit down and read. That doesn't happen anymore at the middle school and high school. Very infrequently does it happen. And adolescents are choosing not to read on their own time. They have too much to choose from in their busy lives that reading ends up taking a back seat. But what we know is students who are engrossed in books and are affluent readers, that they have a strong vocabulary and really good background knowledge of how to utilize those reading strategies that struggling readers don't have. So encouraging that independent reading outside of school is important for us to instill within our adolescent learner. And what we know about middle school and high school is that typically after 7th grade, there is little to no direct teaching of reading. So these adolescents are not being shown how to read anymore. The transition has gone from the elementary years of learning to read to the middle and upper level elementary of reading to learn. And once we get to middle school and high school, many teachers assume that, well, they know how to read, so why do I have to teach them how to read, how to access this material? But they still need that direct teaching. Otherwise, they can't be that strategic reader that we're looking for. Many middle schools and high schools have a basic program for struggling readers where there is that direct teaching of reading. But in the regular classroom, lots of times in the content areas, we're missing that gradual release of responsibility of how to read and navigate the texts that are put in front of them. So these are all aspects of the adolescent learners that we need to keep in mind as we are teaching them. In 1999, Dr. Richard Allington, and if you have not heard of him, he is a fantastic researcher in the area of reading and of struggling readers specifically. He did a study. He studied the United States and 28 other countries. And what he had found out about the United States overall in general is that in the primary grades, we ranked second out of 29. By the end of middle school, we were in the middle. We were about the 50th percentile of our readers and their capabilities. By the end of high school, the United States ranked last. So why might this be happening? What can we surmise about this information? Well, some of the things that we can think about is that by the time they're in middle school and high school, they've lost that explicit reading instruction. They've lost that direct teaching of how to read. Typically, there is little support in the middle school and high school of getting your readers to become strategic reading and using that sophisticated and within that sophisticated and complex materials. There's a difference when you get to those upper levels in doing versus engagement. They can do it, but are they engaged in their reading? That's going to be the big component that we're going to talk about, is how to engage our readers in what they're reading. And one of the last ideas is that we need to guide our upper level learners on how to navigate and manipulate the texts that are put in front of them. Those are some of the things that may be the cause of why by the time we get to the end of high school, our learners are ranked last among this study that Allington did 15, 20 years ago. Now on to our adolescent reader. These are the differences between middle school and high school readers who can do, which means they can read, versus the engagement, being engaged. These are the students that you need to watch for, as they aren't really thinking about their reading. You have your pseudo reader, and we've seen that even if you teach at the elementary. You see that. That's your fake reader, who is just pretending to be reading the information and will just wait for someone else to give them it. You have those readers that are doing surface processing, which means they have no metacognition. There's no focus on making meaning. They're only just reading the words. I have a poster in my room. I teach 6th grade reading, and I have a poster in my room that says, I hear voices in my head, and you have your reciting voice and you have a conversation voice. And these surface processors have that reciting voice. They do not have that conversation voice. We want our students, our readers, to have that conversation voice where they're going through the information in their mind. They're digging deeper. They're analyzing it. They're talking in their head about what's going on and what they understand and what they don't understand. And those surface processors, they rely on the teachers to spoon feed them the information. They can read it, but they don't get it. Our next reader are those readers that are skimming for answers. And we probably have all been that type of teacher when we were in school ourselves, where we just want to get through the reading, we just want to answer the questions, and we end up with just a surface level comprehension. You're finding the basic information needed to answer your homework. So therefore, you do well on the homework because you were able to answer those questions that were on your homework sheet. But then when it comes time to the test and the application and synthesizing, evaluating, analyzing the information, that's where those kinds of readers get lost. Our last type of adolescent reader are those that read and forget it. They just want to get it done. There's no inner conversation going on at all. They're not invested in the learning, and they figure that the teacher is just going to fill in the gaps. They read it, but they forget it. Either the text is boring or too difficult for the student. So what we need to do as teachers, and to be the high quality teacher that the DPI constantly talks about, is making sure that our readers are engaged so that they can dig deeply into that text. And those are the types of things that we're going to discover as we continue through this course. Just want to leave you with a final thought. This is a quote from Richard Vacca, and he is an author. He has written several books on content area reading and the adolescent reader. And I just thought this quote kind of was very poignant and would have some meaning to what we're talking about here today. Adolescents entering the adult world in the 21st century will read and write more than at any time in human history. They'll need advanced levels of literacy to perform their jobs, run their households, act as citizens, and conduct their personal lives. You think about how the Common Core standards have become so much more rigorous than we've had in the past. This is one of the main reasons, because there is going to be so much more demand on our middle school and high school learners as far as what they're going to be expected to read and understand. All right, so make sure that you watch content reading as well, and then take the quiz after you've watched both of the presentations.